Hi, Charles is SirBookSage here, and this is my top 5 most anticipated reads for the second half of 2020, with a bonus choice. Okay, now, first caveat, none of these books are part of the 4 different series I'm mainly reading this year, which is Malazan for Kosikin, Honor Harrington, and the Dresden Files. I'm already anticipating all of those, so no point in putting them on this list. Alright, so let's get started. At number 5 is The Black Echo by Michael Connelly. Now this is the first book in the Harry Bosch detective sort of murder mystery novels, I guess. The Amazon Prime TV series Bosch is based on this series of books. Now I am not a detective murder mystery reader kind of person at all, just a genre I don't really read. But I realize that, that is kind of what Harry Dresden is, or at least seems to be, a book and a half into the Dresden Files series. Yes, there's wizards and like vampires and werewolves and all sorts of things, but he's still solving murders and things like that. So why not read an actual, just straight up genre of that type? And I really, really love the TV series Bosch. It's just an outstanding show. I think I'm on season 5, so I'm almost caught up. And they had The Black Echo not that long ago. Audible had it on their 2-for-1 credit, which is a really cool thing. If you do have Audible, you should kind of keep an eye on that selection because they're changing it all the time. And sometimes there's 1 or 2 things, and other times it's just filled with how am I supposed to choose between these 10 awesome things. But there it is, so I'm going to give a go. At number 4 is a book that I actually have owned for quite a while. It's been sitting on my Kindle forever. And I'm pretty sure I watched somebody just recently had read it and talked about it in one of the wrap-up videos. And it sparked my interest again, reminding me that, yeah, I've got that. And you know what? I think it's time to read it. And that is The Wolf in the Attic by Paul Kearney. Just off the top of my head, it's a family of like expat or whatever Greeks who are now living in London. And the father, I think he's like, argues politics with all of his fellow Greeks there. And the girl, I think she has an imaginary friend, and she, I think, discovers, I don't know if it's a Narnia, Every Hearted Doorway type thing, where there's this other kind of realm thing. I'm not really sure. But I just remember that it sounds really interesting, and I took a peek at it a while ago, and the prose really like grabs you. So I figured, you know what, it's time to read that book. All right, next up at number 3 is an author I read for the first time last year, and that's Nalo Hopkinson. And Jerry of Onyx Pages is a huge Nalo Hopkinson fan, and she recommended I pick up Skinfolk last year, which is a collection of short stories. And I read all of those, thoroughly enjoyed it. I clicked right away with her writing style, her storytelling style, her sense of humor, her just willingness to not really hold anything back. And I knew, okay, this is an author I'm going to work my way eventually through her entire catalog. So it makes sense to start off with what was her debut novel at the time, which is Brown Girl in the Ring, which I believe takes place in a sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian Toronto. Here's the book description. The rich and privileged have fled the city, barricaded it behind roadblocks, and left it to crumble. The inner city has yet to rediscover old ways, farming, barter, herb lore. But now the moneyed need a harvest of bodies, and so they prey upon the helpless of the streets. With nowhere to turn, a young woman must open herself to ancient truths, eternal powers, and the tragic mystery surrounding her mother and grandmother. She must bargain with gods and give birth to new legends. So, how could you read that description and not want to read that book? And couple that with what I know already of Nalo Hopkinson's just expert storytelling, I know it's going to be awesome. Now, I almost had a second Nalo Hopkinson book coming in at number 2. I had it on my list for a while, which is Midnight Robber. But I realized that there is a Nnedi Okorafor book coming out on August 18th. I think it's Ikenga, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. It's actually her first foray into middle grade. And here's the description of this. Namdi's father was a good chief of police, perhaps the best Kalaria had ever had. He was determined to root out the criminals that had invaded the town, but then he was murdered, and most people believe the chief of chiefs, most powerful of the criminals, was responsible. Namdi has vowed to avenge his father, but he wonders what a 12-year-old boy can do, until a mysterious nighttime meeting, the gift of a magical object that enables superpowers, and a charge to use those powers for good changes his life forever. How can he fulfill his mission? How will he learn to control his newfound powers? So, if you haven't read Nnedi Okorafor, are you even a reader at this point? She's one of my absolute all-time favorite novelists, one of my all-time favorite writers. She's another one. I'm not only going to work my way through her entire catalog, I'm going to own all of her books at some point. She's got novels, and there's various different categories. Some are Afrofuturism, some are African science fiction. She breaks them all down on her Twitter account, where she kind of describes what each one is. And she also has novels, novellas, I think short stories, and she even has some comic book. Her Lagoon comic series, or comic book story, I think, which is in a graphic novel now. That's a must pick up for me. I really need to get that. Now, number one on my list is a novel called The Gloaming by Kirsty Logan. She's a Scottish author. When I first joined BookTube, there was a BookTube account, Bookish Betsy, and she did an author spotlight on Kirsty Logan and kind of talked about all of her novels. And The Gloaming, I think at the time, might have been her newest one. And I kicked off 2020 reading The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan, which was a really interesting story. There's a traveling circus that travels on this sort of archipelago of boats all roped together, and they live on the water. And then there's the Gracekeeper, and she's not really human and is trying to hide the fact that she's not really human. And Gracekeepers are people who bring the dead bodies so she can kind of send their souls off. Really, really interesting story. Great representation in it as well. And the woman who recorded the Audible book, I wish she would do more Audibles because I could just listen to her voice forever. And The Gloaming I have on Audible, and it's actually narrated by Kirsty Logan herself. And so I figured, since I opened up 2020 reading a Kirsty Logan novel, I would close the year out reading a Kirsty Logan novel. So The Gloaming is going to be my final read of the year, no matter what I might be working on. Which leaves the bonus pick. Now, there's a good chance, since The Gloaming is going to be at the end of the year, probably like the last week in December, there's a good chance I'm going to read through these other 4 books before that rolls around. Now again, my reading is swamped with Malazan, Vorkosigan, Harrington, and Dresden, but I'm not going to only be reading those. And the bonus pick is another book that I have had on back order forever, since it was first put up. I remember the author tweeting about kind of beginning to write this novel, and it was finally published like a week ago. And that is Unconquerable Sun by Kate Elliott. And I think it's the first book. I don't know if it's a trilogy or it's just a series. The brief description, as she describes it, it is a gender-swapped Alexander the Great in space. Now, again, if you're a sci-fi fan, fantasy fan, history fan, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to resist that. So there's a very good chance that I'm probably going to read that as well. Now, one more caveat here, one more thing. October is going to be a special reading month for me, where I'm going to be spotlighting an author. And one of these 6 authors is going to be that author that I'm going to be pretty much highlighting and celebrating in October. And I'm going to record and publish a video on that very soon. So keep an eye out on my channel for that. It's something I've meant to do since the day I joined BookTube. I actually joined BookTube in September of 2017, and right away I knew, okay, I want to do this in October, but no time to plan with only less than a month in 2017. In 2018, 2019, life was crazy and didn't get to it. So late last year in December, I made the decision that no matter what, I am doing this special October kind of readathon, read-along. So I'm going to have a video up. I guess I'll throw in a couple of reading challenges for anyone who wants to participate. I'm going to be reading a lot of this author that month, but I'll put a couple of challenges up for people who just, even if they want to just kind of dabble into it. And so keep an eye out for that. So that's my top 5 most anticipated reads. Probably very different from other people's most anticipated reads, because I think most people probably do these videos focusing on new releases that are coming out this year. But out of the 6 books, 2 are released this year releases. The rest are scattered throughout in terms of when they were published. As eager as I am for the 4 series I'm reading, I'm really, really looking forward to reading these. And if you've read any of these, let me know what you think. Obviously, no spoilers. If you've never heard of any of these authors, hit me up in the comments down below. And I guess that's it. Yeah, I didn't really plan how to close this video out. So I am going to just say, happy reading. Oh, like and subscribe. All right, Charles' SirBookSage. Happy reading.